In 2014, a man named Ronald Reed died in a small town in Vermont. He was 92 years old. He had spent most of his working life as a janitor and a gas station attendant. His coat was held together with safety pins. He drove a used Toyota worth about $5,000. Every morning he sat at the same diner, a cup of coffee, an English muffin with peanut butter. When his estate lawyer opened his files after he died, she wasn't expecting much. What she found was $8 million. Ronald Reed, the janitor with the safety pin coat, had quietly, patiently, invisibly built one of the most remarkable personal fortunes his town had ever seen. He left $4.8 million to the local hospital, another $1.2 million to the public library. Nobody knew. I want to sit with that story for a moment before we go anywhere else. Ronald Reed didn't have a finance degree. He didn't have a high salary. He never appeared on a podcast or wrote a book about wealth. He just understood something about money that most people, including many people who earn far more than he ever did, never quite grasp. And that's what this video is about. Not tips, not tactics, not the 5 habits of millionaires. The truth about money, the layer underneath all of that. Here's a question most of us have never been asked. When you think of someone who is wealthy, what do you picture? If you pictured a big house, an expensive car, designer clothes, you're not alone. That's the image of wealth we've been handed our whole lives. The car, the watch, the clothes, the visible, unmistakable signals that say, this person has money. But here's what writer Morgan Housel observed, and it reframes everything. When you see someone in a $100,000 car, what you're actually seeing is someone who is $100,000 poorer than they were before they bought it. The car is not wealth. The car is wealth converted into an object you can see. True wealth is invisible. It's the investment account no one posts about, the opportunity taken because there was money saved to take it, the choice to say no to the job you hate, because you built enough of a cushion that you didn't have to say yes. Ronald Reed understood this instinctively. He didn't want to look rich, he wanted to be wealthy. And those two things, looking rich and being wealthy, are so often at war with each other that most people spend their entire lives winning the first battle and losing the second. We were never taught to see this distinction. We were taught to see money in the things people buy, the status they signal, the number on their paycheck. But the most important money is the money no one can see. The money that isn't spent, the money that's quietly compounding in the background, while the person who owns it drives a used car and eats an English muffin. Here's something nobody told you in school. Your brain has a complicated and often destructive relationship with money. Not because you're bad with money, because your brain is ancient. It evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to solve problems like, where is the food? Is that sound a predator? What do I need to do right now to survive? Your brain is extraordinarily good at the present moment. It is remarkably poor at the future. So when someone says, put $200 away this month so that in 35 years you'll have $400,000, your brain hears, give up something real today for something imaginary later. The immediate reward will always feel more urgent than the distant one. This is not a character flaw, it's biology. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky spent decades studying how people make decisions, and one of their most important findings was this. The pain of losing $100 feels roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining $100. Think about that. Losing and gaining the exact same amount produce completely different emotional experiences inside you. This is called loss aversion, and it quietly shapes almost every financial decision you make. It's why you hold on to a losing investment longer than you should, because selling it makes the loss real, and your brain will do almost anything to avoid that feeling. It's why you keep the subscription you never use, because canceling feels like losing something even when keeping it costs you money every month. It's why you hesitate to invest, because the fear of the market going down feels more vivid than the possibility of it going up. And then there's what psychologist Richard Thaler called mental accounting. Here's a small example that will feel familiar. Imagine you receive $500 as a work bonus. That same week you get $500 from selling something you owned. Logically, that's $1,000. Same money, same purchasing power. But almost no one treats it that way. The bonus feels like serious money, money that should be saved or invested. The sale money feels like found money, money that's okay to spend freely. Same amount, different emotional categories, different decisions. We don't treat money as one single thing. We divide it into invisible mental buckets. And those buckets govern far more of our behavior than any spreadsheet ever could. Nobody taught us that our emotions are the real architects of our financial lives. We were taught the math. We were never taught the mind. Let me ask you something that might be a little uncomfortable. Have you ever gotten a raise and felt worse about money a year later? Have you ever earned more than you ever thought you would, and still felt like it wasn't enough? There's a name for what you experienced. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. It works like this. Your brain quickly normalizes whatever you have. A new apartment that once felt like a luxury becomes just where you live. A salary that felt like financial freedom becomes the floor, and suddenly the ceiling is somewhere higher. The happiness from something new fades far faster than we expect, and then we're back to where we started, emotionally, but with higher expenses. This is why research consistently finds that people making $200,000 a year often report the same feeling of financial stress as people making $50,000. Not the same circumstances, the same feeling. Because your satisfaction with what you have is not determined by the number itself, it's determined by what that number looks like compared to what you expected, and compared to what the people around you have. And in an age of social media, where you're exposed to curated highlight reels of your college friends' vacations, your coworkers' renovated kitchen, the influencer's lifestyle that may or may not be funded by debt, the comparison pool has never been larger. Your brain evolved for a village of 150 people, where comparison was manageable. Now it's comparing you to millions. Constantly, automatically. Nobody taught you that you are fighting a biology designed for a world that no longer exists. There's a story Morgan Housel tells about a man named Rajat Gupta. Gupta was the CEO of McKinsey, one of the most prestigious firms in the world. He sat on the boards of Goldman Sachs and Procter & Gamble. He had a net worth in the hundreds of millions. By almost any measure, he had everything. And then he threw it away. He was caught sharing inside information, illegally trading on secrets, and went to prison. Why? Because he was in a room with billionaires. And compared to them, hundreds of millions felt like not enough. Housel describes this as the hardest skill in personal finance. Knowing when you have enough, not as a ceiling that limits you, but as an anchor that protects you. Because without it, the goalpost keeps moving. You earn $50,000 and think you'll feel secure at $80,000. You reach 80,000 and the target shifts to 120. You get there and suddenly 200,000 is the number that will finally make things feel okay. This is not ambition. Ambition is healthy. This is the absence of enough. And it is one of the quietest, most exhausting ways people destroy their relationship with money, and often with themselves. I want to ask you something directly. Do you know what enough looks like for you? Not what your parents expected, not what your friends seem to have, not the abstract number you've told yourself will finally feel like security. What does your enough actually look like? Most people have never asked themselves this question, which means they are working, spending, comparing, and striving toward a destination they've never actually defined. The people who seem most at peace with money aren't always the ones who have the most. They're often the ones who, somewhere along the way, decided what enough meant for them and stopped moving the goalpost. Let's come back to Ronald Reed one final time. He had $8 million when he died. What he had, quietly, consistently, for most of his adult life, was time. Time to read, time to tend his garden, time to sit with a cup of coffee and watch the town move around him. He worked because he wanted to, not because he had no choice. And what he had built was the most valuable thing money can actually buy. Not a house, not a car, not a status symbol. Freedom. Specifically, freedom over his time. Morgan Housel puts it this way: money's greatest intrinsic value is its ability to give you control over your time, to wake up and say, I can do what I want today, with whom I want, for as long as I want. That is the highest dividend money can pay. Not a bigger house, not a newer car, not the respect of people you don't particularly like. Control over your own days. Money is not the destination. Money is the tool that buys you a different relationship with time, with choice, with your own life. When we treat it as the destination, when the number on the account becomes how we measure our worth, our success, our safety, we've confused the map for the territory. You might be listening to this and thinking about a number, a salary you're trying to reach, a balance that would finally feel like enough, a milestone that in your mind is somewhere between where you are and where you'd feel okay. I'm not saying the number doesn't matter. It does. But what that number is for, that matters more. Is it for control over your time? Is it for the freedom to say no to things that don't align with who you are? Is it for real, grounded security? Or is it for the performance of security to people who aren't even looking? Those are the questions that shape how you pursue money. And they're the questions nobody ever sat us down to ask. Ronald Reed didn't leave behind a theory. He left behind a life. A quiet, deliberate, unhurried life. That happened to produce $8 million as a byproduct of the way he thought about things. He didn't chase wealth. He understood it. The truth about money they never taught you isn't a secret hidden in a book. It's the recognition that money is emotional before it is mathematical. That your brain was not built for modern financial decisions, and knowing that is the beginning of making better ones. That comparing yourself to others is a game with no finish line, and the wisest move is to stop playing it. That real wealth is invisible. It's what isn't spent, what isn't performed, what quietly accumulates in the background of a life focused on something other than the appearance of having it. And that the most important question in your financial life isn't how much you have, it's what you're building it for. Sit with that. And whenever you're ready, we'll be here.